So today, really what we have prepared for you is a broad overview of the basics around self-administered services. We anticipate that there will be a number of questions. And so really what we would like to do today is collect those questions and then go back and collect them and then release a summary or a frequently asked question document that really captures our response. That way we can ensure that we're consistent in the message and the responses that we're giving you. So please feel free to inundate us with questions in the chat. Also today, we are going to try something a little different. We're going to try to use technology and make this a little bit more interactive by using polls. So throughout the training, there will be an opportunity. There's 8 polls where the question should pop up on your screen. I apologize for those of you that have called in. We'll make sure to read the question and the responses. So the question should pop up on your screen and you should be able to respond to it. We've never done this before, so bear with us for any technology glitches that we run into, and we'll have to go back and forth on various screens to do that. But hopefully that will help us get a little sense of everybody's understanding around SAS and just kind of test some of our knowledge as we go through our training. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and present our slideshow and turn the time over to Krista.
All right, everybody. How is everyone this morning? Hope everyone's good. All right, here we go with this SAS training. So right now we're just going to provide, like Amelia said, the basic overview of SAS. We're introducing a new SAS guidance today and the forms that will go along with it. And we will identify outstanding questions and correspond the answers as soon as we have them. Are you doing a question right now, Amelia?
Sorry, that's the next. Yes, sorry, I'm
okay.
getting ahead.
I'm like, wait, I didn't think that was.
Yep. Sorry, guys. This is going to be an experience. So here's our first poll question. So hopefully you're seeing that on your screen.
Amelia, I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, it's not
You're
up.
not? Oh, no.
I saw it posted in the chat.
Oh.
Oh, maybe not.
It came up as like a notification, and then you hit the notification and the poll shows up.
So could you explain that, Monica, how you did that?
It showed up like a notification, like it was a chat notification, but it said poll instead of chat. And when you clicked it, the poll pops up on the right-hand side.
Okay, so another way to get to it, there's the chat icon at the bottom, and then there's an icon that has a triangle, square, and a circle. If you click that and then go to polls.
And then you go click live.
Okay, I see people are figuring out. We have 6 votes. So the first question is, what is your experience with SAS? We've got none, some, and expert. So we'll give everybody a bit of time to figure this out. And thanks everyone for being patient with us as we navigate this technology. How many? There's 40 some of us in the training today, right? So we've got 19 votes. Okay, let's give it another minute. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and we'll all learn together to see if it shares the results when I end it. I'm assuming you're not seeing anything, correct? Okay, so we had 26 individuals vote. 10 individuals said they had no experience with SaaS, and 16 said they had some, and no one considers them a SaaS expert, which I think pretty much aligns with what the feedback we've received. So thanks everyone for indulging us on that poll. Krista, we'll just skip the next poll because it's similar, so I'll just go back to the presentation for you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so self-administered services, or SaaS, is a service delivery method in which the participant and or a designee hired individual employee to deliver waiver services rather than receiving those services through a traditional agency-based service delivery method. Services are provided through a non-agency based provider to a participant who lives in a private residence. Participants receiving any type of adult residential services are not eligible to use SaaS.
Okay, so we're going to try another poll. So just remember, it will pop up as a notification and just click on that. So you should have seen a notification. Okay, and the votes are slowly coming in. So this question, for those of you who are on the phone, we're asking what services are available through SaaS? Some of the options are attendant care, respite, non-medical transportation, chore services, homemaking, budget assistance, medication assistance. So we're trying to get a sense of what's available.
So if you can't see the notification, the way to access it is there's an icon next to the chat square where you can access the chat, and the icon has a triangle, a square, and a circle. It's the activities icon. If you click there and then go into polls, you should be able to see the poll question.
And so far we've got 21 votes, so we'll just give it another little bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So we had 27 votes, and 14 of you were correct. The services available through SaaS are attendant care, respite, chore services, and homemaking. So Krista, if you want to walk us through.
Yeah, sorry, that was really little on my screen. I couldn't read it. Okay, so attendant care, I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with what this is, but it's services that reinforce an individual's strengths while substituting or compensating for the absence, loss, or impairment of a physical or cognitive function. The participant must maximize the state plan benefits first, such as home health or personal care. And the unit allocation form must be completed. The next one is chore services. This is a short-term service needed to maintain the home in a clean, sanitary, and safe environment. This service includes heavy household chores such as carpet cleaning, pest eradication, cleaning windows and walls, tacking down loose rugs and tiles, lawn mowing, moving heavy items of furniture, or snow removal. The next one is homemaking. So these are services consisting of the performance of general household tasks such as meal preparation, grocery shopping, laundry, and routine household care provided by a qualified homemaker when the individual regularly responsible for these activities is temporarily absent or unable to manage the home and care for him or herself or others in the home. Respite care, it's an incremental care provided to give relief to or during the absences of normal caregiver, and it's limited to 5 hours a day. Something that we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of is that an individual employee can be authorized to provide more than 40 hours of services per week if the participant does not want any other caregiver. If they just have one SAS employee, that employee can work more than 40 hours a week.
Great. So the next couple slides are just going to give an overview of how to establish self-administered services when you're onboarding an individual. And this flow chart here is taken from the guide that we've put together, which was shared with supervisors. So hopefully a lot of you have had an opportunity to look through that. But essentially is the case manager would determine if the participant is eligible and suitable for self-administered services. You would need to discuss with the participant their right to select a designee. A designee is not required, but that should be a discussion. The case manager would review and explain the requirements, rights, and responsibilities of SAS, so really ensuring that they have an understanding of what that entails. The case manager would provide education on the role of the Financial Management Services Agency, so this is our FMS agency. And then the case manager can participate and assist as needed in completing the required forms, especially those that are required for the FMS agency. A person-centered care planning would be conducted. Service authorizations and required forms are then submitted to the FMS agency. The FMS agency notifies the participant that all requirements have been met and SAS may begin. So that's just a snapshot of what the typical steps that it would take to establish SAS. We're going to dive in and talk a little bit more in detail about some of those steps. So assessing suitability, we had an opportunity to meet with a number of representatives from the various case management agencies. And one of the themes we heard was, how do we know if a participant is suitable for SAS? Help us kind of assess that. And so we spent some time thinking through this, and really it's the person-centered care planning session that should be used to identify health and safety needs of the participant, and if SAS is a suitable way of delivering services to meet those needs. So in the documents that were sent out, we've provided an updated PCCP addendum, and you'll see that there's a new SAS section. There's an entire section dedicated to SAS. And so that should be completed during the person-centered planning, and that will really help identify what their needs are, what services they want, what employees are going to use. It takes you through the whole process. In addition, during the planning session, a thorough review of their rights, responsibilities, and risks associated with SAS must be discussed. As I mentioned, a discussion about whether or not a designee will be utilized, and if so, who is that designee? And there's within that SAS section, there is a place to indicate who the designee is. Development of a backup plan, and services and employees and information. So in the past, there's been a requirement that there be a separate backup plan. We've actually incorporated that into the PCCP. So there is a section where you would essentially provide that same information that was previously requested on the old backup plan in the PCCP. So you're not having to manage a separate plan. And really that should be part of the whole assessing the need for SAS. So that's something that's new to utilizing SAS, is that the backup plan is incorporated into the PCCP addendum. Just want to emphasize, a designee is not required, and emphasize that the designee cannot be a paid employee. If there is a circumstance where the designee, we just actually had one recently come up, where the designee does need to shift into a role as an employee, then we would need to identify a new designee or remove them from that role as the designee. And just a reminder, as we go through this presentation, please feel free to add any questions in the chat box. Another part of assessing suitability is really assessing the residence in which the individual is residing. And so a new requirement and tool that we're introducing with SAS is a home safety checklist. This really will help you evaluate the suitability of the participants' residence, and it needs to be completed prior to initiating SAS. This was also included in the documents that were sent out before today's training, and we'll be sending them out again. It's a fairly straightforward, comprehensive evaluation, and it's only required when initiating SAS services, and it will really help you as the case manager identify any areas of concern within the physical residence of the participant, and then through the planning session, be able to identify how those concerns or issues will be addressed and resolved. So I want to talk a little bit about the roles that there are in SAS. So the employer is synonymous with the participant, and they are responsible for managing the individual employees and performing all the employer-related functions. And that would be recruiting, hiring, training, supervision, wage setting, scheduling, and termination. If a participant is not comfortable in completing and fulfilling that role and wants additional support, then they can identify and name a designee. And they can be responsible for all those tasks that the employer does, or they can assist in those, whatever works best for the participant. And the employee is the individual that is hired to provide SAS services, and they provide those services according to the schedule, wage, and other expectations that are set by the employer. So a couple of important notes here. Currently, a spouse may not serve as an employee. However, in the recent update to our state implementation plan, which was in September of this year, there is language that addresses the allowance of a legally responsible individual, for example, a spouse or a parent, as a paid caregiver. So we're working through what that looks like and the requirements around that. And so further guidance will be forthcoming. And so we just wanted to make you aware that currently a spouse can't serve as an employee, but we're working on guidance that would provide more information on how that, in what circumstances that would be allowed. And other family members may serve as employees. And I think from what I've heard from case managers, that's fairly common, that there's a son, a cousin, a niece, or something like that that does serve as an employee. So the Financial Management Agency, sorry that our slide cut off just a little. We are required to use a financial management agency for anybody that's utilizing SAS, and the required forms and time reporting will differ by agency. In the guidance, there's contact information for the 3 agencies that we currently have contracts with. I also recently contacted them and requested a list of required forms, and so you'll see that in the guide. However, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the FMS agency that the participant has selected and verify what is required, as those forms may change. Some of the agencies have those forms available on their website, and the SAS guide will include a link to their website so that you can see those forms. There's a bunch of required forms with SAS. I think anybody that's had a participant utilize SAS would confirm that. And so we've created within the guide hopefully what's a helpful snapshot of what forms are required and who is required to retain those. So you can see on this slide here, we have the list of the main forms, and then it will indicate if the CMA is required to retain those, if the employer and or employee. So we're really helpful that this page within the guide will help you better identify which forms you need to be retaining for your records and what forms you need to be giving to the participant and or the employee. Based on feedback, we have done away with the requirement of a participant notebook. Some of you may recall that that was a requirement in our previous guidance. That's no longer a requirement if that's a best practice that your agency uses and you feel it's helpful to provide the participant with a notebook to better organize their forms and organize information around SAS. You are welcome to do so, but it's not required. So we're segueing into a new area around SAS. So as I mentioned, we had the opportunity to chat with a couple of case management agencies. And another thing that came out of those conversations is wanting more clarification from the waiver as far as what are the expectations regarding oversight and monitoring by the case management agency. So essentially, what do we at New Choices Waiver expect you as a case manager are doing for a participant that's utilizing SAS? So the information that's going to fall in the next couple of slides is new to SAS. And again, this is all contained in the guide, but I just wanted to emphasize that this is new expectations that we have for SAS. Ultimately, the case management agency is responsible for monitoring the safety and well-being of the participant and ensuring that the services being offered under SAS are at a high quality and are effective, and that they're meeting the needs of the individual. The case management agency or case manager should also monitor the relationship between the participant and employee to ensure that that's a positive, productive relationship, and have regular contact with the participant or their designee through the following methods. There's an expectation that there is a face-to-face visit completed within 2 weeks of starting SAS. So this is for anyone that is newly starting SAS. The case manager should have a face-to-face visit with that individual. During this visit, so services should have already been being provided within that 2 weeks. So this is an opportunity to ensure that the services are being delivered as agreed and address any concerns or questions that they might have as far as managing SAS. And then this is an opportunity to review the progress of proposed solutions for any hazards that are identified in that home safety checklist. If you remember, part of assessing the suitability for SAS is completing a home safety checklist prior to starting SAS. So this 2-week visit is an opportunity for you as a case manager to check in and see if progress is being made to resolve those concerns or hazards that were identified. In line with standards for all participants, case management agencies should have monthly contact with their participants. That can be in person, via telephone, or via telehealth. And for individuals that are utilizing SAS during your monthly contact, again, it's just an opportunity to evaluate how services are going, that they're being delivered as agreed upon, that things are going well with the employee, and address any questions that they might have. A new expectation is that will expect that case managers conduct a quarterly in-person visit with all participants utilizing SAS. So in addition to having an in-person visit and going through those same things that you're doing in the 2-week visit and the monthly visit of assessing how services are being delivered, we have created a health and safety checklist. And this health and safety checklist will really help you inform this visit and inform where attention might be needed. This checklist is included in the guide that we shared, and it's looking at things like, have they had a change in health status in the last 90 days? Are they feeling any isolation or feeling withdrawn, with the intent of identifying possible need for emotional wellness support? Are there any risks in the home? It's a much smaller list of things to look at than the initial home visit, but really kind of just taking a quick look and seeing how things are in the home. Evaluating the backup plan. Do changes need to be made to that backup plan? So it's a fairly comprehensive scope for that visit. It's although it's comprehensive, it's narrow and very specific in scope. And again, this will help you inform your
I'm in
visit.
it now, but I'm talking to you.
Sorry, we'll go ahead and move that. So it is an expectation that this health and safety checklist be completed and saved to the participant's file. Another question that came up is, how do we terminate SaaS services? And so prior to discontinuing any self-administered services, the case manager should really discuss their concerns with the participant and designee and address why they feel potentially terminating services may be in the best interest of the individual. If there is a decision to terminate SaaS, you must notify the New Choices waiver of that decision. And in the guide, we provide instructions of how to do that. An email will be sent to our incident email, and our services team will review that and coordinate with the case management agency about that decision. If New Choices waiver supports that decision to terminate SaaS, a denial letter would be issued and the participant would have hearing rights provided, meaning that they could appeal that decision. Just want to emphasize that a denial of self-administered services does not affect their continued participation in New Choices waiver, and the case management agency must help facilitate transitioning away from SaaS to an agency-based provider for any services that were being provided under SaaS. This is a list of possible reasons that may indicate that terminating SaaS is warranted. This is a list that was in our previous guidance, so I won't read through all of them, but essentially if there are health and safety concerns that can't be overcome, if there's concerns with the employer, particularly any evidence of abuse, neglect or exploitation, these are all reasons that a discussion around the benefit of continuing SaaS or terminating SaaS would be warranted. So that is, again, like I said today, that is a broad overview of what the expectation is around SaaS. I would anticipate that there's quite a few questions around that. I haven't seen too many come into the chat. If there are questions specific to what we've discussed today, we'd be happy to entertain those now. If you have questions that are around considerations that weren't addressed in the training, those are ones that we can take back and discuss and get back to you on. So I'll just pause there and see if there are any questions.
Hi, Amelia. This is Susie from Utah Case Management.
Hi.
Hey, I just had one question on the suitability section right there at the beginning. If this is mid-plan or something that you decide to start SaaS services or you're questioning SaaS services, do you want us to go back and fill out the section in the PCCP if it's not like an annual or the initial assessment time?
Yeah, great question. So in the PCCP addendum, there's another new section right before the signature section, and it's called PCCP update. And so in that section, you would indicate that you are adding SaaS in addition to filling out the SaaS section. And then the PCCP would just be uploaded if you're adding SaaS to the care plan, right? So if mid-year you're adding SaaS to the care plan or making changes to already existing SaaS services on the care plan, you would attach that updated PCCP with the change. If it doesn't result in a change to the care plan, for example, you're changing a point of contact on the backup plan section, that doesn't need to be uploaded and that doesn't need to be submitted. You would just retain that in your records. Does that answer your question, Susie?
Yes, that sounds great. It prompted one more question that's a little bit off subject, but would you use this new PCCP update section for like adding memory care mid-plan as well?
Yes, that's the intent of it. For right now, we're focusing on using it around SaaS, and we're working through further guidance of how it will be used and the expectations for if it's uploaded or whatnot for other changes to the care plan. So watch for further guidance on that. But that is the intent of the update section, that it would apply to any updates made to the PCCP.
Terrific, thanks.
So Stacy's asking, can you tell us the date of the newest PCCP? So the documents that we sent out prior to the training had the draft PCCP in it, and it's dated November 1st. So we'll send those out again after this training. We wanted to give everyone a few weeks to review it and become familiar with it, and then finalize it with the goal of it being effective November 1st. And so you'll see that new date on that PCCP, Stacy. Tracy, any issues with COVID and face-to-face? Our numbers have increased greatly in Southwest Utah. So great question, Tracy. The guidance is really written in non-COVID times. So you should be following the existing guidance that we have around face-to-face visits. Obviously, putting the health of the participant and your staff and preventing the spread of disease is paramount and the priority for us. So I would just encourage you to reference the guidance that we previously issued around face-to-face and take the guidance in this SAS. Just keep in mind that it was written for a non-COVID world. Yeah, Stacey, it's a draft. Everything that we sent out has draft on it. So, but we'll send that out. Curtis has a question. Lainey, I think I'll defer to you on this one. Would a text message exchange count as a telephonic monthly visit?
So in the past, we have said that text messages would not be sufficient for a telephonic monthly visit because it is felt that meaningful exchange would be more than one message back and forth. So on the monthly visits, in order for it to be meaningful, we believe that needs to occur, in communication, in a conversation over the phone. So if there's questions about that, since technology has changed quite a bit since the face-to-face policy and telephonic monthly contact has been written, please submit those in the chat and we can clarify that in the future.
Thanks, Lainey. Christine has a comment. It seems like a dementia client would need a designee and the designee cannot be an employee. I think if you can all think through it, there was definitely a conflict of interest if the designee is also serving as an employee. Keep in mind that the designee is responsible for completing some, if not all, the responsibilities of the employer, which includes wage setting, scheduling, verification of time, whatnot. And so if they're also working as the employee, they're essentially setting their own wage, setting their own schedule. And so there is a conflict there. So important to remember that the designee cannot be a paid employee under SAS. Madison, back to Curtis's question. If a client is deaf and texting is the best form of contact, I think that would be appropriate, right? You need to be able to communicate in the format that works best for the individual. And then also with SAS going into effect November 1st, do we need to update anybody's plan using those in November or at the next annual review? That is a great question, Madison. And I'll be honest, that wasn't something that I had thought through. So we'll ponder that as a team, and when we release the new documentations, we'll be very clear, as we'll make sure to address this expectation. So thanks for bringing that to our attention, that we need to clarify that. Annie, I have clients that prefer written correspondence versus verbal face-to-face. They have a speech issue that caused them concern. Again, communicating in the format that is best for the participant is appropriate. I think in situations like this would be a good opportunity to document in their PCCP, so that that's something that you've discussed and you and the participant have agreed on the form of communication that will take place. But again, we don't want to supersede anybody's preferred method of communication. But to emphasize what Lainey says, we want to make sure that those contacts are meaningful in nature and not just simply checking off the requirement to have some sort of contact. Any other questions? Given that we have quite a bit of time, I thought that it might be helpful real quick for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to see the new documents, to go through some of the documentation that I referenced in the training, or in the slides, excuse me. So this first screen that I'm sharing form, and I don't know how, hopefully that's large enough for you. This is the health and safety checklist that I referenced that should be completed quarterly. So I just wanted to highlight the areas that we're asking you to discuss and assess during that quarterly visit. And again, that visit should be face-to-face, with the asterisks being unless COVID is still a concern and you're adhering to our guidance around COVID and face-to-face visits. So the first section is around level care. So just asking, have they experienced any substantial change of health in the last 90 days? Has their level of assistance required for ADLs changed? Is there any change in disorientation to person, place, or time? Or are there any new diagnoses? So again, this is to help you, this is a tool for you as the case manager to prompt some questions and discussions around these visits to really ensure that we are assessing the needs of the individuals that are utilizing SAS. The next section is emotional well-being. This one we went back and forth on about whether or not requiring a standardized tool or giving more leeway or freedom. We kind of settled on a compromise in that we've referenced some tools that might be helpful, but are going to leave this to case management agencies to develop a process or approach that they're comfortable with. But really what we're here is we're concerned that as individuals that are residing in a home and not in a congregate setting, that there is potential for increased isolation, which then may result in some challenges around emotional well-being, depression, anxiety, whatnot. So we really want a conversation to take place around how the individual is feeling. Are they able to access the community? Do they have the support they need? The next section, it's a little hard to read because we have draft written over it, but these are these environmental risks. So this is a much shorter list than the initial home checklist, and things just to look at. So for example, is there a smoke detector and is it working? Is there clutter in the living areas that need to be addressed? Is the home cooled and heated appropriately? If you're visiting in December, is it a comfortable temperature for the participant? Other things. So again, just a quick look at making sure that the environment supports a healthy and safe residence. One of the things we see quite frequently with individuals that are residing in a private home is there's often a delay if at all, a report in critical incidents. So this is a great opportunity for you to check in and say, have there been any critical incidents? Were they reported? Obviously, and if they weren't reported, make sure that they were reported, and then ensure that the safety measures or the response to those incidents have been appropriately implemented. The next section we're going to ask you to assess is how is the relationship working between the services and the employees? So are the services being provided in accordance with the care plan? Are there any changes that need to be made? Is the participant asking for an increase in units or an addition of services? And then some questions around the employee. We recognize that this may be a sensitive list of questions if the employee is a family member. So we would just encourage you to use your best judgment of how to navigate those discussions, but essentially assessing that the employee is providing the services in accordance to the participant's needs and what was agreed upon. Here's a specific question around community access. Here's the backup plan. So basically what we're asking is for the backup plan to be reviewed quarterly, and if there are any changes needed to the backup plan. And if they were, then you would update that in the PCCE addendum. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of that checklist. And again, that would be used during the quarterly in-person visit. Tracy, in an audit, would all these forms be required to be part of the QA? Great question, Tracy. So right now, our performance measure with CMS indicates that a backup plan, if you'll remember, that's what's, and correct me if I'm missing anyone, but that's a form that is required and that we look at. So the backup plan is still required. It's just incorporated into the PCCP, and we'll be evaluating what forms would be required in future audits given these changes to SAS. Oh, Lainey, sorry, didn't mean to step in. It looks like you were chatting with Tracy. Correct me if I gave the wrong answer.
No, you're fine. I was just trying to understand if this question was related to like the annual audit of your records that Medicaid does, or if you're talking about the quarterly reviews that we have case management agencies do. So Amelia's answer was correct. And I guess, you know, at any time, if a strategy is adjusted, we may ask for these records, but we, as of right now, we do not plan to, you know, do a formal review as things are being completed. In the future, maybe if we determine that's an area that we could improve on as a program, but for right now, what we would be looking at is the backup plan section in the PCCP addendum. I hope that answers your question, Tracy. If not, please unmute and we can clarify that. Okay, I'm assuming that we're fine there. Thanks.
Great. Susie, just a concern. Can you elaborate on the termination of SAS services letter that clients will receive? I wouldn't want clients to be concerned that the termination of New Choices Waiver Services in general. Great point, Susie. So termination, you know, is a very strong word. So these would be, it would be essentially a denial letter that would go out indicating that New Choices Waiver is denying the SAS services. And our language around in those denial letters, we're working on making sure that those are really clear, provides information on how they could appeal that. And so I think you make a really good point here that language and clarifying that this doesn't impact their enrollment in New Choices Waiver would be beneficial to have in that denial letter. So think of it more of a denial of if you as a case manager have determined that terminating SAS services is in the best interest of the participant with the plan to transition them to agency-based services, then we would essentially issue a denial for those SAS services. If the participant, and this would just, you know, help clarify what we're doing, the action that we're taking, and then they could appeal that if in the event they didn't agree with that decision. But great question. to clarify. Yes, we don't want to add any confusion. So I think as you're providing education and talking through SAS with participants, educating them that it may be at some point a decision may be made that SAS is no longer in their best interest and those services may be denied, or but that would not impact their enrollment. So that's an opportunity for you to clarify that. We've had so many new forms. It would be helpful if a list was sent out with a list of what's required for each visit, a checklist for admit forms, quarterly forms, and annuals. This would help me with things like background checks are due annually. Okay, yeah, we can, thanks for that feedback, Shauna. We've really tried hard in the guide to be very clear about where those forms are required, but we can easily put together a checklist similar to what the required forms are. We can expand on that and indicate when they're required. That's really good feedback. Thanks. And Anna's taking notes for us, so I'm sure she's got that, and we'll assign it to Chris and I to add to our guide. Any other questions or considerations regarding this information and as we work to finalize the guide and forms? Everybody wants the checklist. You will get a checklist. That's something we can easily do. Okay. So we'll just kind of wrap up. If there's any last minute questions, Cheryl, you want to call? Yeah, we will give you a call about your SAS clients. Maybe shoot Krista and I an email. If you don't have Krista's email, just shoot me one so I remember, and don't forget to give you a call. So kind of wrap up. If there's questions, feel free to have those come in. So something that I'd be curious in hearing is, and we don't want to unmute everyone, but you all should see we've abandoned our polls. It was a little bit more challenging than we thought it would be. But we did have one last poll question that I was interested in hearing is, what is your comfort after participating in this training and getting this information? Would you see your comfort level or your understanding of, let's say your understanding of SAS, has it increased? So if it's increased, can you push the raise hand button? We'll try it this way. Oh, okay. This is cool. I can see how many of you are, and I hope that you all can see this. This works much better than our polls. Okay, so about 20 of you have indicated that it's increased. How many would say, yeah, it's about the same? I already knew all of this. Nothing new. So you have to take your hand down if you did raise it. And then if everybody can take their hands down, does anybody feel that they're just still very, their lack of understanding around SAS is still very limited and that more in-depth training would be needed? Okay. We've got a few. Yep, and totally understandable. So for those of you who feel like, more in-depth information or training would be helpful, feel free to reach out to Krista and myself directly. One thing we realize is that SAS is a very large concept, and our focus today was really just the basics of what needs to happen to get it up and running. So I would encourage you, when we send out the information, to read through the guide. We're trying to be very intentional in this guide and make the information digestible and really clarify what needs to happen when. So please read through that guide and provide any feedback. We also anticipate having additional training and around SAS, focusing on how to problem solve if there are challenges, how to support the family in utilizing SAS training for employees. So there's various topics around SaaS that we feel will be beneficial, and those will be forthcoming in the future at some point. So today our focus again was really just to provide you with the basics. So if you feel like you're needing more, feel free to contact us. Are there any last minute questions or comments?
If there's not any questions for the group, I have a few questions for them.
Okay.
I don't want to step on your toes.
Nope, I think we're good. We'll turn it over to you, Lainey.
Okay, so one thing that we are working on is kind of a manual or something more formal, similar to what was shared with the SaaS guide surrounding care plans. And I had sent out a Google form asking some questions about how our current materials could be improved upon, what was needed, things like that. And a lot of the feedback was mixed. So I wanted to take a second to see if there were any things that you guys could help me better understand. So one theme was that everyone felt strongly about a summary of ultimate requirements that were needed for care plan approval. So we felt, and this is not a criticism, I'm genuinely trying to understand where the disconnect is from what we think is helpful versus what you guys feel is helpful. So we feel like this was documented in the care plan adjudication guide. Can you help me understand if that information is unclear or if it's difficult to navigate versus if we just didn't know that was in existence? Anybody willing to shout that out? So by raise of hands, who didn't know that material was around? Okay. That's helpful. So I'm guessing that this extends farther beyond just this group, since many of you here are supervisors, and so that makes a lot of sense. Cheryl, thanks for your input. Said it's too much information, need more bulleted info. So digestible formatting, sounds like. Use it, but it's hard to use, hard to see, can't print it on one page. So with the Excel spreadsheet, it was intended to be used electronically. Is that a barrier for your agency, Stacy? Do you have that ability to use it electronically? Okay, so maybe again a little bit of usability with the current format. Okay. Another theme that I heard was that our denial comments are hard to understand. Can anyone elaborate on what would make that better? Are we not communicating enough information? Is it too much? Help me understand what would be more helpful. Depends on the case manager's experience. Okay. So if we took approach of using a standard format, it would be something like, you have requested X service, or this amount of units of this service. Policy requires this. Please adjust your submission accordingly. Is that better? Okay, another issue. The care plan is denied because of something that needs to be changed on the PCCP. You are not able to resubmit the PCCP alone. The care plan says no changes have been made on care plan, and then we deny it because no changes have been made. That makes sense. Okay. So yes, that format of a denial response would be helpful, so there's not as the need to do so much homework. Okay. Some inconsistency in approvals and denials. If you could give me a specific case and a specific example of inconsistency, that would be really helpful. So I can either make something more clear in our information, or we can do a better job of communicating why some determinations are case specific and that they're different depending on the circumstances surrounding that unique individual. Okay, so Brenda, if you type made changes to PCCP in the comment section, it allows the care plan to go through. Hey, that's cool to take note of. Anna, if we could make note of that one for sure, that will be helpful. That might be a system workaround that we just have to use until PRISM goes live. Yes, thank you, Brenda. That really helps. Stacy, I agree with inconsistencies and denial. Also, equipment denied stating it is covered, in DME companies stating the HCPCS code being given by the New Choices Waiver worker is wrong. An example, bed cane. All DMEs say this is not covered. Some workers at New Choices Waiver approve. One worker always denies. So, okay, we can improve that process there by maybe requiring the DME code you guys are referring to. I just had a care plan denied because pre-enrollment case management was on the care plan, but was already on the care plan. In other words, I did not add it. That's an interesting one. I think for me to better understand that, Diana, it would be helpful if you could email me the name of the other client so that I can go back and research that. Because it's either something was missing in our formal guidance to everyone, or that's, again, a piece we can provide additional training on. So chore services in assisted living, denied, saying it wasn't allowed. Again, that's going to be dependent on the unique situation. So if the situations were the exact same, then the outcome could be the same. I experienced difficulty with memory care. I make requested changes from a prior experience, but then something else seems to be needed or changed. Okay. So Brenda, is it, are you talking about the memory care checklist, or are you talking about in the care plan submission itself? Thanks, Diana. I appreciate you being willing to send that information. Yes, memory care checklist or PCCP. Okay, we can put together more formal guidance surrounding that. I don't think our provider manual even goes over the memory care checklist and what's required. We feel like the requirements are pretty clearly laid out on the checklist itself. So if, again, not to sound like we're unsupportive, but specific cases would be really helpful so we can know exactly what we're looking at and what we need to clarify. Okay, this is helpful. I think what we're running into is there's just always going to be some level of subjectivity in these approvals and denials because each participant is different and the situations and their needs are unique. So we're trying to be as clear as possible in our communication of what will apply to every scenario, regardless of the unique circumstances and what may be different. So that could be coming into play as well. Okay. Thank you. This is really helpful. I appreciate it. So some of the feedback in the question of, is there anything else you would like to know or like us to know? Some of the feedback we got was that it takes a long time to get care plans approved. So we have set a standard for a care plan to be adjudicated within 5 business days, and we are hitting or exceeding that. So I'm curious if your guys' comments are, about it taking a long time is more geared towards the time it takes for like an ultimate approval versus just submission and then some kind of action being taken. And also, what length of time is too long for an approval? Like, at what point is it problematic for you guys, and in what scenarios? I think it has overall gotten much faster. It's good to hear. Thanks for acknowledging that. We really are trying. Approvals have definitely improved. Thank you. Great. Thanks for that feedback. We appreciate it. It's helpful to acknowledge the successes on both sides, right? We see that you guys are really engaged in providing good information, and we really are trying to be responsive and work together. All right, that's helpful. Thanks for letting me have a second to ask these questions. Really appreciate it. That was all that I had. Amelia, did you have anything else?
No, I think just, again, we will send the draft documents to supervisors. That's just an easiest way for us to communicate. So supervisors, please disseminate the information that I send as appropriate. If you don't typically get emails from me within our supervisor group, just let me know and I'll add you to that. The other thing I would like to comment on is we're still working through a process to get our trainings posted to our website in a timely manner. So if you have an interest of receiving a copy of this training before it's posted to the website, which could be several weeks, please feel free to email me directly, and I can send that to you using a site that the state uses to transmit large attachments. So just let me know. And then I think that's all I had.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.